You want water?
Okay, it's a little after 11 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started with today's Ed Policy Committee meeting. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Butler, Senator Figures, Senator Gudger,
Here.
Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey, Senator Price, Senator Shellnut, Senator Smitherman, Senator Stutz, Senator Chasteen.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Okay, well, clerk, will you call the first bill, please?
HB 363 by Representative Collins.
Okay, members, this is a bill that, a companion bill to the bill that Senator Barfoot passed out of this committee last week regarding school choice and the Students' Opportunity Act, restructuring the Charter Commission Board. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, Senator Stutz. Clerk, we call the roll. We get a good roll.
Senator Butler, Senator Chasteen,
Aye.
Senator Figures, Senator Gudger, Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey, Senator Price, Senator Shellnut, Senator Smitherman,
Aye.
Senator Stutz. 6-0. 6-0.
Okay, 6-0. Bill's given a favorable report. Clerk, we call the next bill, please.
HB 342 by Representative Dubose.
Good morning, Representative Dubose. I don't think so.
Can you get it? You want need some help? That's a good senator right there. He gonna take care of it.
Hello, I got it.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, committee. I'm here to present HB 342, which has passed out of the House with much support. Last year, we passed the Alternative Teacher Prep Act, which addressed the teacher shortage we have in Alabama by creating a professional educator certification. This professional educator certification is only available to individuals who have a 4-year degree from an accredited university. And as you know, we do have a lot of teacher shortage in Alabama, and this is to address that situation. But this legislation today addresses the requirements of the teacher certification providers. Only approved teacher education programs that meet our high standard, our high quality standards will be offered. We require that the certifying program to have successfully operated at least 10 years in at least 5 states and certified at least 10,000 teachers. Additionally, the applicant must pass an exam that is substantively aligned with Alabama standards in both subject area and pedagogy. Individuals that participate in this type of alternative certification program are on the average 39 years old. They take the subject matter course, classroom management courses, and then must pass the test on subject matter and pedagogy. These courses are available online and allow the applicant to work and take classes as their schedule permits. Additionally, if they are hired by a school, the new teacher will be required to take part in a mentoring program for that first year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Otherwise, I'll ask for a favorable report from the committee.
Senator Smitherman, you're recognized.
This having been in the schools as much as I have, and in there right now, as I speak, still in there. You know, coaching, and I had the opportunity to be like y'all, go in there at the legislator, and they flipped the script and called me coach to senator and back coach that evening. But I had a chance to talk to these people, and because that has been a big concern of mine, being in the school. I'm probably in the school, other than people who, I don't know who in the legislature is teachers, but other than that, more than anybody, is in our body, because I'm in there all the time coaching and whatnot. And I'm really impressed with what they do. I'm impressed with the standards that they have, the mentoring program. Even after you get in there, they're under the state mentoring program for 2 years. And that was important to me, that someone went in there not only was an expertise in the subject matter, but knew how to teach young people. And I think that was, I've grilled them. I want y'all to know, if you don't ever say nothing to them, I done grilled them, you know, and I'm pleased to say that I think that they do a good job, and I fully support their efforts in trying to help us get additional quality, qualified teachers.
Thanks, Senator. Any other committee members have any questions? Okay, is that a first from Senator Gudger, second from Senator Stutz? We've had some new members come in. Let's get a good roll.
Senator Butler, Senator Chasteen,
Aye.
Senator Figures, Senator Gudger, Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey, Senator Price, Senator Shellnut, Senator Smitherman, Senator Stutz. 8-0.
8-0, bill's given a favorable report. Thank you, Representative DeBose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee.
Clerk, call the next bill.
HB 430 by Representative Garrett.
Okay, I think Representative Garrett is still in a budget hearing downstairs. Representative Carnley, welcome to Ed Policy.
Thank you. I'm a representative now. I appreciate this. Representative Garrett brought this, approached about carrying this up here in the Senate for him. It is an issue too that are some things that are being addressed in here that I've heard locally, but you know what this does is it. I'll just have to look through it with you there if you've got a copy of it. You know, one of the things that it does is on line 29 and 30. You know, it requests that the Literacy Task Force vet content for age appropriateness. There's been some issues, things that have been brought about, what's being given to our students to read. And so we just want to make sure that as we're teaching them to read, that's what our objective is not to try to infiltrate them with content that they shouldn't be looking at. It also goes on to state that, you know, the task force vets and approves, but what it does is it says that they're, you know, we just ask them to vet the list of approved vendors for these assessments. And if in time they remove one of those vendors, they allow the school system that is using that to continue for a period of up to 5 years. Just because the data that they're generating from these assessments doesn't get moved over to a new assessment. So in essence, what we're doing is if we're saying, hey, immediately you have to change over, you're losing all the data that you've generated on those students that have been under that assessment. So we're asking that that continue on. And it's also kind of following in line with the Numeracy Act that was implemented, that the director of the Alabama Reading Initiative would be the chair of that task force committee.
Okay, any questions for the sponsor? Senator Smithman.
I hate to put you on the spot because I see Representative Garrett's name on there, and I wish he was here.
Me too.
In fact, he's one of the reps in our local delegation as that. But I like him a lot. Let me say that first. I really do. He's a good person. But I have some concerns, and I'm just gonna tell you, my concerns are threefold in this, and it's not necessarily. I don't know if the concerns were there at first when we first tackled to do this, whether they were placed here now. I can't tell you the difference. So someone may be saying, well, it was already in there, whatever, something that was a problem, I think, once I talk about it. But I'm concerned, and I want everybody to hear this, I'm concerned with we as a body recognize, and y'all gonna hear me go back to this one document every time that I talk about these things, is that we as a body recognize the importance of having accurate information. When we did the resolution that for the Women's Month, y'all remember that on the floor, that resolution was inclusive of everybody representing the state. It was thorough. The information was accurate. And people said, what are you talking about? You know, people running around, and I don't mean us or nothing, but people running around talking about Columbus discovered America. Columbus ain't discovered nothing. It was America, what is his name?
Pussy.
Yeah, that's who's governor mayor. And we out teaching these kids Oklahoma. He was over there in the Bahamas somewhere, around the bottom of us riding around. Talking about, I see some land over there. And so my whole point is this: I'm concerned in here that we won't have accurate information under the name of trying to fight indirectly some of the little theories or something. Ain't nothing about no theory that when you said that George Washington Carver took the peanut and did whatever he did with it. That's accurate information. That's not a theory. So I'm concerned. I'm just concerned about that I haven't had a chance to read it enough to absorb and see. When you see all these lines on the line, that's what I'm trying to tell y'all. What y'all talking from? I had enough time to analyze what these lines do. That's number one. Number two, that y'all know how I feel about this issue, and you all are very sensitive to it. So when I get ready to say my second, so I'm not saying you're not with me on it, but it ain't nothing talk about no diversity on this task force. Nothing. I don't see no language in here or nothing like that.
It's in there.
It is.
It says that it has to be. It's got the diversity and equity language.
Well,
let's see.
On what page?
43 on page 2, it says all appointing authorities shall coordinate their appointments so that diversity of gender, race, and geographical area is reflective of the makeup of the state.
Great. Well, I only got one concern. But with that, I'll move for a favorable report on it,
Okay, Senator Smith, Senator Hatcher, you had a question? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of problems with this, and like Senator Smith, I wish our friend Representative Garrett was here. I was last evening trying to find out who these task force members are.
Good luck.
I had an issue with that. So you recognize the same issue, the task force? So who are they accountable to?
Nobody today.
That's right. He's right.
Now, and it's my understanding that the state superintendent has an assessment tool for reading that he has been able to use, and we've had some measurable success with that. Are you aware of that?
I believe what he has done is put together a list that was provided by the task force. So he pulled a list from their vetted and approved list.
But I'm understanding the task force had a separate, two separate assessment tools, and theirs did not have the same measurable outcome. So you recognize where we have the...
Yeah, and I think that's what he's trying to address in here is that to give options for the assessments, don't limit it to just a couple, to be transparent on the metrics that, approve a vendor.
And then of course, obviously, when you mention the term transparency, we can't discover who the task force members
Right.
are.
And so one of the things that's being done is it's on page 4, 92 through 97. It says the task force shall meet at least twice a year. The task force shall set meeting dates and times, set agendas, vote, develop recommendations for the state superintendent. What I was trying to get to is all task force meetings and subcommittee meetings shall be publicly posted along with complete listing of all task force members. So this will give us that transparency to see who are these members and when are they meeting.
I guess the other question, because the big piece for me is a task force that seems to have all this authority as relates to this literacy, the task of the Literacy Act, and we don't have any transparency there. And I'm assuming whatever they're deciding is consequential and without accountability.
Right. And so what Representative Garrett is trying to do with this is prevent us from limiting this down to just a couple of approved vendors. If we have more vendors that meet the criteria, because this all came from Mississippi when they started their reading initiative, they've got vendors over there that are not on our current list that has just been approved. And there's vendors that are on there today that aren't on the new approved list. And we've got school systems that are using those. And so what this is saying, as long as they meet the requirements, the requirements that they say will allow them to be approved, then they can be approved. They can't be, well, it's got to be transparent why they were not allowed to be on the vendor list. They've
Because
got
right
to
now,
say,
that's
hey,
not, does the
you
bill take
missed
care
it.
of that part?
What's that?
The bill takes care of that vetting part?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it says you've got to tell us what the metrics are that approve or disallow or allow or disallow a
And
vendor.
who's the you? Who's the you? The you is who?
The task force.
That we still don't know.
Right,
And is there any way, because I know Representative Garrett's not here, because the recommendation would be to disband this task force. First of all, it's too large. And I think it's easy to have too many cooks in the kitchen. And it makes it very, very difficult for us to get the kind of accurate results that we need to get. The other part, Mr. Chairman, is if someone is here from the Association of Superintendents as well as school boards, I'd like to hear their thoughts on this, because I think
Mr. Hollingsworth, you present?
Yes, sir. I just walked in. I'm sorry. I missed the discussion.
yes, we're on obviously the Literacy Act, and one of the first things is about the accountability piece here in terms of the task force is accountable to whom and what, based on your understanding of what's been happening so far, have there been measurable results? If they are, if that is the case, what you see in this bill that we have before us, do you support? Basically,
We support the bill as written as it came out of the House. Yes, sir. So looking at the assessments that were on an initial list published, our state has made tremendous gains. If you look at those over the last few years, and there's another list that's been published that is a little more restrictive as far as the assessments and types that can be used. And so there are some concerns from some school districts that have had a lot of success using some of the assessments that are no longer going to be allowed under the current list that will take effect almost immediately. So I don't know if that addresses most of your questions or not.
It does to some extent, but the idea, so I know I've heard you correctly, as a representing the Association for Superintendents.
Yes, sir.
The superintendents support this particular bill.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Senator Stutz, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that too. My concern was with the task force and the point that he made. Looked like there's 20 people or so on the task force, but I couldn't find anywhere where a certain number of them had to meet for a quorum or so when we look at these things that have been changed that superintendents aren't necessarily happy with, it looked to me like 5 people on the task force could have had a meeting and made the decision. I mean, I don't see any requirements about a quorum or a majority to make you see what I'm saying, that a very small percentage of those appointees on that task force could be making these bad decisions that y'all don't approve of limiting the number.
Mr. Hollingsworth, have another comment, please.
I believe this bill, as you have it, places the director of the Alabama Reading Initiative, that's an employee of the State Department of Education, onto the committee that is not there presently. So from the accountability aspect, which is what I think is the piece that maybe you've been missing, it adds some accountability to that. As far as the number of meetings, I think it requires 2 annually. I believe is the verbiage in the current law, and also what's before you today.
Yeah, it does require them to meet twice, but it doesn't require how many people of the 19 or 20 on the committee be there to have a meeting, was my point.
I think that's probably like our committee. I think that's the committee's decision to set a quorum.
And so, yeah, so very few people, if they're coming from all over the state, a few people could have made that decision with no accountability, was my point.
Senator Smitherman, have a question.
And I'll be quick, Mr. Chairman. I agree with both the senators, what they said, and I think the key word I heard over there is that with no accountability. You know, once we turn that thing over, we don't have nothing to do with it after that at all. And I think in that aspect that this bill, I moved for it to come out because I appreciate the concept. Anytime we're trying to do something to help people get better with reading and everything, I'm all for that. But this bill needs some more work on it after it comes out before it's thrown out there, because all those are valid concerns and issues, and such things as reporting back to us on a regular basis. We need to probably amend it and create a legislative oversight. I mean, you all realize how much money we throw out there for reading, out of all literacy, everything, and we literally turning over how that's going to be implemented to 20 folks that he first started out, we don't even know and know where they're coming from. We don't vet them in confirmation at all. They probably need a vet. Listen, if we can vet the people on the textbook committee, we sure need to be vetting these people in this legislative body. So they need confirmation, not just and that's the only way we're going to be able to have our hand on whether or not that group is what we want and what it needs to be done. So I'm just saying that these are some things that's got to pop up and be done on the floor as this bill move forward. So I just want to say that.
Just a couple of comments. Senator Carnley, first, thank you for stepping in for Representative Garrett. I know that you were handed this kind of at a late notice, since he did have budget hearings this morning. And I think the committee members have raised some valid points. All of these we do need to be able to address before this bill gets to the floor. And I think we can have some conversation and get Chairman Garrett up here to meet with members that have these questions, Senator Smitherman and Senator Stutz, and try to make sure that before this goes to the floor, these questions have been addressed and answered and dealt with in the correct way that we are all comfortable with.
And one thing I was going to bring up, and it's not an accountability measure, but it is to hopefully kind of break, the perpetuation of, if we get somebody on there are term limits to the board members. So it's to try to help keep people from getting on there and staying on there, especially if they're, not doing the wishes of the legislature.
Okay, Senator Smitherman, did you move for favorable?
I did.
Okay.
Under the conditions we just talked about, I did.
Senator Hatcher seconds. Clerk, his previous role, you good with previous role? Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay. All right, 8-0. Bill's given a favorable report. Senator Carnley, thank you.
Good job, son.
Clerk, call the next bill.
HB 43 by Representative Warren.
Representative Warren, welcome.
Her daughter's name had 3 letters, and 2 of the letters were 8, and she could not recognize the 8. So this is when I started this bill, because I realized that coming to first grade, students need to be ready. And I've been, like I said, been carrying this bill for some years, but the State Board of Education at their January meeting recognized the issue and the problem that we had in the state of Alabama. And they made an administrative code change. And this code is 90-3-1-04. And it says first grade readiness. Number 1, each local board consistent with section 16-28-4 shall adopt and implement policies that ensure students being enrolled in or promoted to the first grade can demonstrate first grade readiness. Number 2, each policy at a minimum shall provide first grade readiness may be demonstrated by successful completion of kindergarten or otherwise demonstrated first grade entry readiness on an assessment of essential development and physical skills. B, provide for immediate interventions for students who are unable to demonstrate first grade readiness but otherwise required to be enrolled in the first grade. Provide for the wide dissemination and advertisement of local educational programs to inform parents and guardians of first grade readiness strategies and resources to help prepare students. So basically today, all my bill is doing is ratifying what the State Board of Education has already put in policy.
Senator Smithman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I haven't seen anything that says that the ratification from the Board of Education saying that you both to flunk these children. I heard all assessments and help and everything else, but there's not one word in there saying you both to flunk them. You know, I'm gonna make this simple. I have a few little quick comments, but I'm gonna make it simple to y'all. This the bill I'm talking about. When I said from kindergarten to prison, y'all heard me talk about this aspect of the concern. You probably wondering what in the world Smillerman talking about. This is the bill I'm talking about. This bill is simply saying this, in my interpretation, is that we're gonna take a child who first of all, I brought out the fact yesterday that we are $11 million less in 2022 for at-risk kids than we did in 2008. All you got to do when we go on the floor, go over there to reference, ask them to give you a copy of what they gave me yesterday. It speaks for itself. We put a third in less. And now what we are saying to these kids is that we don't fully fund K. So the bill is saying we're available. So kids, first of all, they're going to be kids that don't even get K, can't get K. And we ready to give them a test when they walk in there to say that if you ain't ready, first grade is to start getting you ready. We are saying if you don't come ready, you got smart, already know stuff, then we gonna flunk you and you're not gonna get a chance to go to first grade. That's what this bill is saying. And I'm saying to everybody out here, if you think that a child is gonna be held back in the first grade, can't even get to first grade because they wasn't kindergarten ready, and I'm gonna stop there before I finish this. I don't know how it is in some of y'all districts, but in the urban areas, especially I'm talking about Birmingham right now, but I bet you Montgomery the same way, Mobile and Huntsville, you don't get transportation from a mile into the school. You get zero transportation. Buses run from a mile out. So every child that's in that distance, we are telling a 5-year-old that they're going to have to get up in the mornings and they're going to have to walk and go to school, especially if their parent have to be at work at 6. They have to be there at 7 or 5 or whatever. Or they may not even have transportation. But we're saying that child's got to walk in there and take this test. And if you don't pass this test as if you've been to kindergarten for 5 years, we finna hold you back. And you can't go to the first grade. You now got to go to kindergarten. That's between 6 and 7. And I'm going to renew what I was before I stop and went off on that. If anybody in here thinks that a child is going to flunk, that's flunk when you don't let them go. Going to be put in a position where they flunk first grade, and then we're going to move them to literacy, and then they're going to flunk the third grade. They're not going to have that. If we think a child is going to stay in school and graduate at the age of 20, we're not being realistic. That's not going to happen. How many kids at y'all school graduate and walk across that stage at age 20? That you can figure that out yourself. That's number 2. And then number 3 is simply this, is that what needs to be done is that there needs to be more put in at risk so that the at-risk money can help give these kids some help and some tutorial and whatnot without telling them that if you don't pass this test, you're going to flunk. The assessment should be simply to see where you are. And then from that point, give you the tutorial help that you need to be able to help bring you up. But to tell them they're going to flunk, if I'm going to test you up front, if you can't get to kindergarten and to do that, no, that's not good. That's not right. It's not even humane. And so I just want to say this to the group that's here now, and I'm going to stop because I'm not trying to monopolize all the time. You all going to have to get a chain and hook it up to a train to drag me out of the floor and away from that mic if before I am comfortable enough to let these kids get flunked like this for 2 years in a row and that's that. This is terrible. This is terrible, y'all. That we because that is a pipeline to prison. If you think somebody's gonna stay in there, they're not gonna stay. And we're not even talking about bullying. We're not even talking about you got a kid 2 years old sitting in some grave with young ones. They're gonna fleece them and everything else. We're gonna have major problems with that, with the kid and what's that there. So I'm just telling y'all, this is what I was talking about. In case you wonder, when you hear me up there, I'm talking about, this is what I was talking about, this situation right here. And I am 1,000% against this. You know, I'm just, you know, we had this commercial on the radio station. I'm gonna close it, and everybody was talking. And when the man get through, he'll say this right here. And I'm not trying to break it down like that, but I'm just saying what the man on the radio said. He said, "You've heard that. This is one black man's opinion. What about yours?" Okay. So thank y'all very much.
Thanks, Senator. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I feel very confident that, yes, we need to do something to help these students. Why y'all think I'm talking about at-risk money? Some of y'all, I'm going to look at around here, Senator Butler was the only one here. We passed a bill requiring you give tutorial systems to students who make a C or low. That's a statute. I sponsored it, and he co-sponsored and helped support to get it through. We got on the book that you're supposed to do that, but it takes money to do that. But don't get confused that's what we're talking about. Here it is on page 2. It says an underage child may be admitted to public kindergarten on approval of the local board of education on a space available basis. That's what I just said without saying all the fancy words. We ready to tell folks that ain't even gonna get a chance to go to K. And we ready to zap them because they don't walk in on something that we ain't even providing for them. Remember, folks ain't like us. They can't go pay that. What is it cost? Well, $175 a week or $150 a week. Send these kids to these kind of things. It's about $300 to $600 a month. Folks, some folks don't even get no more than that for the little checks they get. Over here on the other side, at the bottom of 3, it says a child who is 6 years of age on or before December the 31st or the date of which school begins in the enrolling district and who has not successfully completed kindergarten shall be entitled to admission to the first grade in local public schools at the opening of schools for that school year or as soon as practical thereafter, as long as the child demonstrates first grade entry readiness as determined by this test. And how you gonna demonstrate first grade readiness and you ain't even been able to go to kindergarten? That's what I'm saying. This is an assassination on our little kids by telling them that they can't do that. If we want to provide tutoring for them, we want to provide the success help they need. If we want them to have to go in the evenings for school, if we want them to go at Saturdays, if we want them to go in the summers, that's fine. But we shouldn't be talking about we going to flunk you if we test you on something that you ain't even had a chance to go get no help whatsoever. And we can't segregate systems out that this system over here provides it, so we ought to do that. No. Just as you heard, if you was on Judy, just as you heard, nobody in it was on Judy. Yes, you was, some of the stuff was on Judy, just like you even heard me say this before. The Constitution saying the Equal Protection Clause, you got to treat all of them the same. You can't say the ones that got money, the test apply to them that got K, and the ones that don't, where it don't apply. We can't do that. That's unconstitutional. So I just thought I would share that, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator.
And at the proper time, I want to move for unfavorable report.
Senator Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I understand quite well today how you feel, and I understand that. I feel like that, we've done a lot of things here over the last several years to try to change education. But we've stood in the way of some time as far as foundations. And I understand your feelings of the way you perceive this bill. But we've got to look at, and I highly would like to see maybe you and Representative Warren to visit a little bit, of what we can do as far as from a foundation standpoint. The foundation is K. The foundation, if we don't start trying to, yes, when they get to third grade, they're going to want to walk away because they're not on the same level with the kids sitting beside them. So I'm not wanting to throw stone or do anything that's going to hurt any child. But if we don't start doing something in this body to be able to make sure that every child in the state of Alabama has the opportunity as far as being able to learn to read, then we are at fault ourselves. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I want to give a favorable report.
Okay, Senator Price gives favorable. Do I have a second? Senator Hovey? Yes,
And one other comment
Senator Butler, you're recognized.
before we vote. Representative Warren, is this a mandatory kindergarten bill? Well, I understand the preparatory wording, but it appears it's mandatory kindergarten. If you're not ready for the first grade, you're going to have to do some kindergarten training. And the second question I had, where's the funding? The funding come out of the parents? So we're going to add this to public education. Where's the funding? Do we have a fiscal note? Like an annual increase of $8.4 million.
Senator Smithman, Senator Butler,
I'm sorry, he's still
you
talking.
finished? Okay, Senator Smithman, you're recognized again.
Yes, that in part goes to part of what I'm just saying. I hear what my good senator over there saying, and I don't think anybody disagree with him. But to pass a bill to make us feel good that that's what we're trying to do, and not providing the opportunity for them to go and starting out with a minimum of $8 million that we just said, we setting these kids up to fail to make us look good. For us to stand in public, we doing something because our kids, we've been 48th and whatever like that, but we ain't putting no funds down there for them to get the help whatsoever. It ain't gonna help by osmosis because we passed the bill and don't put money down there. All this doing is gonna flunk them. They're gonna, because they tested, regardless whether they get that enter that 8.6 that they need to set up the system. We're putting the cart before even the horse. We need to be in there talking about how we can get some, and if it goes to conference, how we can get 8.6 million to 10 million to first set up a program and then come back and start talking about this on the next ride to see if we got things in place to do that and still not flunking them, but to pass this and you haven't done none of that, you're setting these kids up to fail, and it's an injustice to these kids because we know when we walk out of here that resources are not there, and that there ain't no way they can meet what we saying here, and yet we gonna say that the test is mandatory, and then that's gonna apply to them. That's wrong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Senator Hovey, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't mean to belabor the point, and I do understand where you're coming from, Senator Smitherman, and I think you've got some valid points. I would only propose here is perhaps we can wind down the discussion that I would prefer to think of this as an opportunity to identify areas and students that need the help. And I would reiterate or echo Senator Price's notion that this is an opportunity to identify needs and opportunity to avoid flunking them, as you say, further down the road. I'd rather identify it early and catch it early in kindergarten and first grade than third and fourth. And I would agree that it's easier to help identify and get them and keep them on track at that earlier age than third and fourth grade. So I would agree with you on a lot of what you have to say, but I would rather see this, as a matter of Jay's perspective here, is an opportunity to identify an issue earlier where it's easier to correct and there's less impact on perhaps repeating a grade. If it is kindergarten or first grade, I would contend, just Jay, one other fellow's opinion, that that's easier and less disruptive to their life than third, fourth, or fifth grade when they really are going to be behind, or it really is going to be a little more detrimental to them socially than it would be in kindergarten and first grade. So that's just a matter of perspective of if they are going to be held back, when you boil everything else that we're talking about down, if there is a situation where a student has to be held back, I think that it's more constructive to do that early on when we've identified an area that we need to tutor and need to help at kindergarten and first rather than fourth, fifth, and sixth. So it's just a perspective.
Can I ask
Yes, sir.
a follow-up question? Do you think that it's better to hold them back when you don't, because knowing you're going to hold them back because you don't give them no training, it ain't okay. You still think it's all right to flunk them, and we don't, and they have had no opportunity to get prepared to take this test. We haven't provided nothing for them under the name that because we have not done our part by providing the funding, then it's better to hold them back because we didn't do what we got to do than them holding back in the third grade. You think it's all right to flunk them, and we haven't put nothing in place to help them?
Well,
it's all right to flunk somebody?
I would rather not call it flunking. I'd rather call it identifying someone that needs some additional help.
But if they're 6 years old and you don't let them go first grade, that's a flunk. Because you got to take a test. The test that you take determine whether you pass on or you stay back behind. But
if you just let them move on to second and third grade, is that doing them any help?
No, we talking about moving to first grade.
No, I know, but if you let them in first grade and then just let them progress, is that really doing it? I would say that's a bigger disservice by letting them move on further down the system and get further behind than identifying it early on.
So you want to set them up, though, that we don't give them no help and pass the buck on to them, that they stay back?
I was trying to give you credit. There's a lot of merit to what you have to say. I'm not saying leave them in the wind. I hope there's a way we can facilitate that tutoring and a foundation early on at kindergarten. I'm just saying don't send them on down the line without that foundation. So, yes, part of what I'm agreeing 100%. I hope we can find a way to set them up.
But we don't have nothing in place now. We don't have no money. We don't have a system or nothing. But you give them a roll of bill that's going to implement flunking them. I understand what's that. How they going to get to where you want them to get when you passing a bill saying taking a test and determine where they go, and there's nothing in place now, money or a structure. Everybody don't even offer K. But you ready saying you okay with flunking them because right now for the reason, I'm not quoting what you said, but for the reason you just said, I seriously, I'm really hurt that we're gonna do students like that under these situations. Let me just say that way. Considering doing something like that, this like we don't even care nothing about them because we ain't got nothing in place to help them, but we ready to zap them. I mean, we don't care. But they ain't being held back today. Show me in that at the state board
Okay.
where they said that they supposed to be flunked and not move forward. Out of all that other readiness stuff you said, show me in there where that we got in place now that they'll be flunked and then can't go forward.
Members, here's what I would like
Thank
to do.
you.
I think we got some questions that need to be answered. Representative Warren, I would suggest that you and Senator Smitherman have some conversations to try and answer some of these questions. We've had a motion to approve and yes, sir. Senator Hatch.
If I may, because I would be upset with myself if I didn't speak on this, because I suspect I'm probably the only person on this committee who, at current time, my professional work is as an educator. And more specifically, I'm director of Montgomery County Head Start. I have 1,200 plus kids that I'm responsible for in 18 centers throughout this county. And, you know, I'd rather almost disagree with God than disagree with my mentor, Senator Smitherman. On this issue, there are some things that can be worked out. I remember when this came up in the House, and I remember hitting the floor because one of my colleagues said that this, to mandate kindergarten would be an infringement on our freedoms. The problem is, if a child gets to first grade, and that is the place to get them ready, we've already failed. Pre-K, for the programs that I administer through our program, it is our job to get them to the point where when they get to kindergarten, and there are numbers statistically that indicate a precipitous drop of what happens to a kid who comes out of a Head Start program and pre-K programs who do not have that 1 year, that by the time they're in third grade, those kids drop off. I mean, the numbers are startling. Maybe that information really needs to be brought to bear, because if we don't do something, I know what's happening to my babies, who for the most part are finding themselves, unlike what happened 58 years ago when Head Start was put together. And we had even retired teachers, including my grandmother, who was a part of that. We still have to get these babies ready. I have children who can navigate devices like this at age 2. But if they don't have the kind of, there are a couple of things here that have to work for them. And one such thing has to be that if we get a child into first grade who, for the most part, is still trying to learn ABCs or just understanding their name or writing their name, they are woefully behind. Woefully behind. And that child, we will do an absolute disservice to placing a child in a first grade class who cannot do even those basic things. And we're not even talking about when many of us were kids, what they're having to do by the time they get there. And finally, one of the schools of my appointment, last appointment in New York, where it's a private school setting, pre-K kids were given Apple devices that allow them to start developing algorithms. Pre-K, a pre-K program. So if those babies who are doing work that I would have a challenge doing as a full-grown adult are to compete with young people who, for the most part, would find themselves not even knowing how to write their names by the time they get to first grade, that is a disservice. What I do think needs to happen, money needs to be put into the kindergarten programs to help strengthen the foundation for our babies, because if they get there, that is going to be and that will be the case. And the last thing, I offered an example yesterday of a child that I work with here in Montgomery, who, because he was not ready when he got to first grade, he has had to repeat a class. And this child is now going to fifth grade, but he's behind because there were those basic pieces he simply did not have. And so now we're working to catch him up. And I might add, physically, he is almost as tall as I am. So the idea that this is a child who might be disaffected with the whole idea of education and all of these other pieces that come into play for him means I'm going to have to stay on top of it just to keep him encouraged to stay in school. So we've got to do something, because what will happen is, again, all of that data, and I don't know, maybe that needs to be a part of the conversation I think you were suggesting. all of that data that is accessible to the average layperson needs to be laid out to say, here's what will be needed to fund an at-risk program with measurable outcomes that says this child is almost guaranteed, if not guaranteed, other than some other circumstances, to pass whatever is necessary for this baby to have success in first grade, because there's nothing worse than a child sitting in a seat who is ill-equipped to be able to do the work that is required of him at a basic level to be able to function in a classroom setting. I am not an engineer. You give me algebra 2 and trigonometry, I'm lost. But the bottom line is I should not be seeking to take on a job of an engineer if the basic tools are not in place. So at least if we can get some basic stuff in place, fund it properly, then I think this is something that works. And yes, I do absolutely go on the side of mandating kindergarten if we are serious about what we need to do to help our children to be successful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hatcher. And thank you all the committee members. I think we've had some very good discussions on this issue. Senator Price made a motion favorable and Senator Gudger second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Senator Butler. Senator Chasteen.
Aye.
Senator Figures. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Senator Hovey. Senator Price. Senator Shellnut. Senator Smitherman. Senator Stutz. 7-1.
7-1, bill's given a favorable report. Thank you, Representative Warren. Thank you, committee members. We are adjourned. Thank you.